Hi, it's been a long time since I've recorded a podcast episode, and the reason I stopped recording is because something in me just wasn't aligning with what I was doing. So I stopped and I actually gave myself over a year to get back to this. I also recognize that I don't want to put myself under pressure where I feel like if I'm recording a podcast episode, it has to be every week and has to be, or every month. I'm going to record as I feel inspired to record. And so this is becoming a brand new season. I don't know what this season is going to look like. However, I know that when I feel inspired, I'm just going to record something and put it out there. So what I wanted to say is that the podcast episode I'm actually recording today is an episode I actually scripted for in 2023. Can you imagine? We're talking about over a year ago. It's probably about a year and a half ago that I scripted this episode. I didn't record it. Something in me just wasn't aligning, but I kept it. And I kept it because I really resonated with the message. And I think that the reason why I'm recording it now is because this is the right time to record it. This is the right time to put it out there. The format's changed. A lot about me has changed. And I can actually predict that some of you are going to keep listening to me. Some of you are going to be like, no, I'm not listening to her anymore. However, the change in me is more about me being truly who I am, aligning with who I am in this season, and no longer about people. It's about who I am and what I have to offer and who it's meant for. So, in today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about compromise, specifically when compromising doesn't work. So, what does it mean to compromise? And I wanted to look at a few dictionary definitions of this word to come up with what compromise means before I actually get into the whole gist of my message. So the Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English says compromising is meeting somebody halfway to do part of what someone wants if they do part of what you want in order to reach an agreement. Britannica.com says it is a way of reaching agreement in which each person or group gives up something that was wanted in order to end an argument or dispute. And then we have another definition which says it is to reach an agreement with someone in which both of you accept less than what you really want. Then we've got vocabulary.com, which further goes on to say compromise can also mean to erode or diminish, expose, or make liable to danger, suspicion, or disrepute. For example, the building is compromised, so it is unsafe for people to live in it. The mission was compromised, so our spies will not be safe. If you cheat, you have compromised your integrity. Compromise involves two people or groups. It also involves you. The word I see online that I like is the word mutual. Mutual means shared or a commonality. Oh, great. However, I find that compromise is a word that when it comes to our emotional safety and well-being needs us to be aware of, as when we lack awareness of what is happening in and around us, it can actually be used to diminish or erode us, compromising our very being. This happens when being asked to compromise is used to silence you, to subdue you, to dominate you, to control you, to manipulate you by guilt or blackmail you into compliance, to coerce you into submission. When compromising leads you to victimization through unfair treatment, when compromising removes choice from you as a weaker or more compromised person, or when only one person compromises and is the only one who always compromises. What you find in these examples above is no mutuality or shared agreement. Someone holds power over another or over a group and uses that to get them to compromise. This leads to violation of one's volition or free will and is a violation of their humanity, for they're not an animal, right? Humans, if there's something that I want you to grasp, is that we all have executive function, which separates us from most animals, and we thrive when we utilize this. I'm going to go into this so that it makes sense to you. I'm building a beautiful picture here. What do I mean by humans have executive functioning skills? What this means is executive brain function is the skill of our prefrontal cortex, which is located in the front part of our brain. This gives us the ability to plan, to critically analyze, to appraise, to decide, set tasks, and it also helps us emotionally regulate. In other words, it is exercising our autonomy and our individuality. We are using our God-given free will. Our species has survived over the years due to our cognitive skills and abilities setting us in superiority over all animals. It is critical for a human to use these executive functional skills as it is what has made us grow. When we don't use them, particularly due to suppression, it becomes a violation of our will. A person in this dynamic will not thrive. This is why I'm talking about when you're thinking about compromising, you have to remember that there has to be a part of your free will volition that comes into whatever decision you make. True compromise comes from true authenticity. If you were taught to self-sacrifice, self-sabotage, people please, have fear of abandonment and rejection issues, or have trouble setting boundaries, you will either approach compromise from an unhealthy place or an unhealthy version of you. Let me explain. For your nervous system, someone not being pleased with you is far worse for you. That you will compromise something you may genuinely want, feel, be, or wish to express. If your nervous system typically is ruled by fear of others and their reaction towards you, that is, you fear being rejected, you fear being unwanted or abandoned, then you will rather not experience that, leading you to compromise instead of validating yourself and acknowledging what you genuinely want. If you are unaware of what you truly want, need, or desire, you will also not compromise from truth, but from what someone expects from you or of you, and usually you end up in situations or agreements you may regret or become resentful about once you figure out that it wasn't what you wanted after all. It can also lead to settling. When we compromise, we settle for what we don't ultimately want. And guys, this can actually make you seem to be manipulative to another person by agreeing to something you don't truly want. It's misleading them, and it doesn't even get you what you want. Compromise in itself is a word, and the nuance to this word ultimately depends on the people implementing the use of this word and context. So where does compromise work? Compromise works where it is mutually beneficial to both parties. This involves both parties giving in or giving up something to reach an agreement. There is no eroding or diminishing of one's volition or free will. Parties or persons involved are allowed to bring their own voice into the matter. They can choose and decide if the agreement suits them or not. I think the greatest measure of powerful compromise is, let's meet halfway or somewhere in the middle to make this work. It shows validation and appreciation of each other and valuing each other's wants and needs as important. Healthy compromise should also be open to review the original agreement and readjust it as necessary. It leads to conflict resolution. It leads to a deeper sense of partnership and togetherness. As you can see, none of the words I mentioned involve domination, control, coercion, or manipulation by guilt. And there's a guy on Instagram called Keir Gaines. He's a Black American therapist, male therapist. And I heard him say this and I loved it. He said that partnership checks its need for power and control and says, my way is just a way. It is not the only way. Good partnership removes the need to compete. And I just loved that because that felt to me like a healthy way of compromising. So when I'm coaching my clients, I actually group those with issues in compromising into 3 camps. So I'm going to tell you what these 3 camps are because you can be in either one of the 3 camps and it determines the outcomes of compromise on you. So camp 1, it means you're good at reaching agreeable and mutually beneficial compromises. You revisit, review, and readjust. Camp 2 is agreeing to compromises that benefit the other party and not us or them. Camp 3 is where we always benefit from asking others to compromise for us. We always get what we want at the expense of others. This is the my way, type situation, if you all remember Usher's song, My Way. And this is a whole different topic on its own. I'll probably do it sometime when I feel inspired to talk about the ones who always ask you to compromise, but it's not for this. So let's continue. My concern is Camp 2, folks, because I spent years in Camp 2 where I agreed to compromise for others, but never consider myself and my situation, and therefore I usually had to endure unpleasant consequences. I am bringing this up because from that I realized that compromising is a skill. Skills are things we are either good at and confident at doing. So why am I talking about compromise? Because for you to be good at compromising, you have to learn this skill and be confident with it. Skills are learned. Some are taught. For example, my career was nursing. I learned skills such as giving injections. I looked after patients after heart surgery, right? However, things like compromise come with situational awareness and experiences, like when you learn to drive. Compromising also requires negotiation skills, assertiveness, and a degree of self-awareness. From the time we were babies to toddlers, we have been adapting and compromising by learning to conform and also to accommodate others. Depending on our programming, we can become very skilled at compromising through ability to voice ourselves and the use of good negotiation skills. Or, depending on our programming, we can also struggle with compromise if we are not able to voice our needs, wants, and negotiate. If you were taught silence is golden, for example, yes, silence is golden, but is it always? Let's dive into the mind of a Camp 2 compromiser, as this was me in my 20s to 30s. I agreed to everything, even though that was not what I wanted or needed. I agreed so that I could keep the peace. I agreed to please others so as not to be termed a difficult person. I agreed to please a loved one so they don't leave me, lest I suffer rejection, abandonment, feeling unwanted, unloved, ultimately feeling like that I wasn't good enough. I agreed to be with people in cases where I didn't want to be lonely. I agreed to save face and preserve myself so that I keep a good reputation. I agreed to please God. Well, so I thought. I agreed hoping to pray for God to change other people or the other person. I agreed for fear of judgment from others. I agreed as that's what I saw modeled to me as expected for a woman and a Black African woman too. I agreed so I don't get into trouble. But was this the real me? Was I being genuine? You could say, so what? Exactly. Great question. I recognized how this type of behavior and mindset left me sad, miserable, low in mood, resentful, mad, angry, bitter, frustrated, and somehow like I'm hard done by in this life. I was a victim. I felt like a victim. Guys, I had learned helplessness, where I accepted unfavorable terms and conditions for my life, believing I didn't have a choice. Helplessness begets helplessness as I gave away my personal power to choose and decide. If I compromised where I didn't want, I officially handed over the power to the other person over my own happiness and well being. I was also giving them the message that I'm okay with you having all you want and need at my expense. Guys, this is called self abandonment, self sacrifice, and self betrayal. It is effectively saying, hey, my needs, wants, and desires are not important. In other words, I'm not important, but you are. I don't matter, but you do. Do you really want to know what message this sends? It communicates, I am not worthy to yourself. I am insignificant. I don't matter, but others are important. Do you then wonder why you feel depressed, feel resentful, bitter, angry, unfulfilled, discontent with your life, and perhaps jealous of your partner or others doing what you want to do? Talk about self loathing behaviors. So, we tend to fall into this trap when we fall in love or are in very codependent relationships. Some of it is enmeshment from familiar upbringing or cultural. A big one for me is religion, as by putting others first or putting others' needs first, we think we're becoming more holy and righteous, if you get me, right? It is great to do that, by the way, if it doesn't leave you resentful, bitter, unhappy, sad, angry, unfulfilled, and murmuring in your heart. It is great to do that, to put others' needs and to put them first before you, if you remain loving towards them and loving towards others in your heart, and can keep that level of compromise and the momentum without ever feeling like you are diminishing or eroding in some way. In short, your behavior, mindset should be in congruence to who you are. It should align with your life values and principles. It should align with who you are genuinely, authentically. It should be your truth, not lies. It should align with your yes being a yes and your no being a no. Anything in between is deceitful, as Jesus said, for it is shrouded in untruths. Neither should we be like Martha, who was serving but resentful at Mary because Mary chose to take care of her need. I call this the Martha syndrome. Check out my previous podcast called Acts of Service, where I fully go into this syndrome. Now, I used to find the word compromise very triggering. In fact, I still do to an extent. What does this mean? It means when I hear the word compromise in a relationship situation, I feel my body tense up, becoming hypervigilant and on alert to be on the lookout. In the past, it would make me feel so anxious until I healed parts of me. These triggers show themselves in our body viscerally, which means like a bodily response, or from our verbal responses. There's either resistance or discomfort, elicited by a memory, a word, or a song or scent, or even just the sight of someone. I compromised a lot in relationships, much to my dislike, as most times it meant giving up what I wanted so that my partner gets what he wants, and also not to risk them being unhappy, threatening the relationship and love. I also compromised a lot in certain friendships and in some family situations. Compromising triggers me as I don't want to be in a place where I live my life in an unhappy, miserable state again, or at the expense of acquiescing to please others, just so that they don't judge me, saying, she's changed, just because I say no. And I don't want to be in a place as well where I acquiesce to compromise so that people don't desert or abandon me. In the past, I would get triggered because it reminded me of an unhappy time in my life. And I suddenly know I don't want to go back there. I used to negotiate only to be dominated, usually through guilt. I would get triggered, as in my case, the word compromise in relationship with others was always used to subdue me and manipulate me by guilt. It is a word that played on my learned helplessness from being a highly codependent people pleaser. However, the greatest thing out of this all is that I learned active emotional awareness. This led me to study, understand myself, get to the root and healing my past traumas. I learned to accept myself into living the life of my dreams, the life I have always wanted, and a life I intuitively deep down feel was meant for me and is possible. A life only now happening for me when I stopped being afraid and stepped into my integrity and authentic self by an uncompromising attitude towards where I want to go in life. Upholding my values, principles, standards, living in congruence, not afraid to say no and be disliked to abate the discomfort of someone else. I had to know my negotiables and non-negotiables and not relenting where there is no reachable agreement. I learned people are adaptable and can help themselves, guys. No more saviorism behavior in me. I'm not trying to save anybody because I know people can save themselves. Because most people have the tools within them to figure out how to manage whatever challenge they're facing. I accept that I may be disliked and lose people, but I'm okay with this as I'm no longer willing to lie to myself as an act of compromise. However, this was not possible until I took the first crucial step. And the first crucial step was loving myself fully, knowing who I am and loving myself, meaning loving the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of me. Knowing God created me, knowing God loves me and truly has great plans for me. I did this by identifying my true wants, needs, and authentic desires, then choosing to go after them unapologetically. It's okay to want what I want. Understanding the unconscious reasons why I allowed this to happen to me in the first place and deciding to do it differently going forward. Another crucial step is forgiving others, forgiving the past, forgiving myself, and moving on. And then pursuing what God has always placed in my heart passionately and knowing if God be for me, who can be against me? How do I do this? I did this by affirming myself and my worth, which is very important. You have to internally know it and feel it and not seek it externally. Stay prayed up, meditate, and trust in God. I did it by being truthful and being honest with myself, by checking my heart before committing to things. Another word is establish boundaries. By getting more connected to my inner knowing through Holy Spirit guidance, gut feeling, and intuition. Self-regulation through nervous system regulation methods. I journaled my thoughts by doing a thought diagnostics to see what I'm thinking. How does my thinking guide my decision making? And emotional inquiry, really to check what emotions are coming up. I also got coaching, therapy, as I needed to work through challenges I was facing and some of my limiting beliefs. Another way you could do this is to be part of a tribe of women who are all about thriving in all situations and life experiences. One example is my community, Thriving Sisterhood, which you can join. So, I hope this lesson has taught you what you need to learn about the power of your own voice and how to use it. If you identify with all the compromising examples given and want to process this further in a way you can navigate your life with more power to choose, to decide and be, then connect with me via my social media links in the podcast show notes at the end. Perhaps you're in a compromising situation right now, sapping you of your joy and energy, and you don't know what you should do. Again, I say connect with me or connect with a therapist or someone else to help you find solutions suitable for your situation in a way that brings you to a desired satisfaction state. I have various programs and methods to coach you, equip and empower you to live your life confidently if this message resonates with you. As I conclude, my intention is to open your eyes to the healthy use of the word compromise and how to apply compromise in your lives powerfully. Trust me, you thank me, and you thank me that you've heard this message in the future. Remember, there are times in life that call for sacrificial giving, acts of kindness that require nothing in return. This is the essence of noble humanity. a vital component of our very existence. It is a choice we make willingly, not out of obligation or manipulation. When we give of ourselves in this way, we are rewarded not by external praise, but by the satisfaction that comes from knowing we've made a difference. We must continue to embrace this spirit of giving, for as individuals we are interconnected and reliant upon one another. Whether it be caring for our children, supporting our families, or lending a helping hand to someone in need, these acts of kindness are not compromises, but expressions of our shared humanity. Let us not confuse the two. Please continue to do that. As people, we need each other. I may not be fond of the word compromise. Hear me out, as I'm not trying to get you to think like me, because I can hear some of you fearful ones already thinking, this scares me. Please note, not liking the word does not mean I don't compromise. I do. And in this podcast, I wanted to show you how I do it. I hope you now know the power of healthy compromising and the difference when it is not. Thank you so much for listening. Stay connected to me via my social media channels. I would love for you to tag me when you listen to this and comment on what your biggest takeaway was. Do recommend this podcast topic to friends and others who you know may benefit from this too. I'm Fatima, your life coach. Take care and bye for now.